Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are excited to be back for another virtual interview series. We have a very exciting guest today, all the way from New York City on the set of The Tonight Show. We cannot wait to get started. But I do want to remind you, we have an amazing guest lineup for our virtual interview series. It goes all the way through the end of November. So if you would like to see our full guest lineup, visit our website at www.reachandteach.rocks, ROCKS. Also, we will open up our guests to questions from students. So please feel free to drop your questions into the chat, into the comment section, and we'll make sure and get those questions answered before we end the interview today. So let's go ahead and get started. Jamie, it is so nice to have you.
Hello, how are you? How's everybody?
I mean, we're so excited. So you were actually on the set of The Tonight Show, right?
We are, correct. Here it is. We
Can
are
you,
live.
can you give us a quick studio tour so we can see what's up?
Sure, I can. Please excuse me if I fall down the stairs, but here we go. Here's the actual studio. Okay, here's where the Roots play.
Very cool.
There's Jimmy's desk over here.
Okay.
And here's all your camera stations. Yep.
Very cool. So could
Try
you
to get you a little closer.
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit? Well, first introduce yourself. Tell us your name. Tell us what you do at the Tonight Show, and just
Sure.
a little bit of background information.
My name is Jaime Gudewicz, and I've been mixing monitors and sound for good about 12 years now, or 20 years now, sorry. And I've been at the Tonight Show for about 2 years. So I guess a little bit about my background is I went to a music school to study music and sound recording, but in the beginning stages of my career, I wasn't really sure of what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to be involved in the music industry. And in some capacity, I played an instrument, not really that well, but well enough in my own brain to get me to school. And then when I got to Berkeley, I realized how good everybody really was, and I shifted into studying the art of sound engineering and making records. It was at Berkeley, and they had all this high-tech equipment that you're looking at that enabled me to really want to focus on learning how to make the record sonically. I had a good friend of mine who's now one of my co-founders at my technology company. He said to me, you have the opportunity here to learn technology, not learn to write songs. You can write songs on a beach at your own time. So I said, makes sense. Let me study the technology. And that's where the path started, and kind of got lit by the, I guess, fire that was lit under me. And I began sitting in the studios and recording studios probably 18 hours a day learning how to make records.
That is incredible. So with you doing what you do at the Tonight Show, can you tell us a little bit about your responsibilities? What does your day-to-day look like when you get up and go to work with Jimmy Fallon? How cool is that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I would say this is probably the most ideal place to do what I do. I come from a touring world, so I used to be on tour with a lot of music artists. Brockhampton, Nas, Jennifer Lopez, DaBaby, every artist you could think of that's popular now. I used to tour with, doing exactly what I do here, and that's run these consoles for their music tours. So when this job came across my plate, it was a no-brainer. With respect to my day-to-day and my process here, it's a combination of, say, 3 or 4 different jobs. Primarily the sound and the sonics of the job of each artist or each guest artist is really the primary concern. So what I'll have to do weeks leading up to their performance on the Tonight Show is I focus on the relevant technical gear that they need, and that's called an audio advance. And what we do is we communicate with each artist's management and production, or production manager in a sense, and we focus on what technical gear they need or that they're customary with using. So as you can imagine, each artist has their own particular type of microphone or playback system or band gear or things of that nature that they're customary for using. And as the Tonight Show, we are responsible for giving them that show level, tour level, and concert level quality of sound here. So it is my job to receive all that information from our music supervisor. He connects me with each person for each group, and then I take on and import all of the information into my brain essentially, or my database, and then I advance that to the necessary team members here. So what that means is you have an input list, which could mean all the necessary drums, bass, keys, and guitars. So their lineup, their musical lineup that they're going to perform with for that song. And we take that input list and we translate that into and transfer that into our template here at the Tonight Show. As you can imagine, these consoles are designed to run the Tonight Show, but we have to import what they do into our framework and into our setup here. So that has its own set of challenges. So that's the first step of our job, or my job. The next step is that's done usually days in advance or weeks in advance, sometimes the day of with certain acts. And then what we do is we get here about 9 a.m. in the morning, and we start with meeting their team. And often in the touring community, as you can imagine, we know, or I know, or the other gentlemen who mix here often have worked with them before or toured with them before. And in my position for what I do, we often, prior to coming to the Tonight Show, what we used to do is we would go from client to client. So I may work with Brockhampton 1 week or 1 month or 3 months, and then on the 4th or 5th month, start working with the baby, or start working with Maren Morris or a different artist here and there. So we are often meeting different crews and different team members and being infused into different camps. So it's often we've worked with somebody before. So then when they come in the morning of their performance, we have from 9 to 10 o'clock, so 1 hour, to configure this console to meet the needs of their artist's performance. At about 10:15, the band shows up. If they perform with a band, if it's a rap act, they'll perform with their DJ or their playback engineer, and we will then get all the technical connections happening and turn all these knobs and faders and make everything work for what they need their performance to sound like. And then from that point on, about 11 o'clock, 10:30, I would say. So an hour and a half after we've gotten in, we do a sound check with the artist. So the artist will come and sit with me on the side here by the console, and we'll work on how their mix should sound for their performance. We'll run about 1 or 2 rehearsals, and then we go into camera blocking, which is when our director and our lighting director all focus on how they want the cameras to look and how they want to shoot the performance. We'll camera block at about 11:15, and then break for lunch at 12, and then the show starts about, I would say we probably shoot the show at about an hour. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour, but we'll start shooting at about 5, 6 o'clock in the evening.
That's awesome. So when you talk about, getting everything adjusted and mixing the audio. So for someone like me who has no idea what any controls on that wonderful setup does,
right.
Can you explain that a little bit more? So you're adjusting the sound, what are you doing?
Okay. So just to give you the broadside view of this thing, right? There's 2 consoles. You can see here, there's one console here, right? And then there's another one here, right? They're 2 independent consoles. We're on a new set, so they're typically not next to one another. I could show you the old set, but usually they're in 2 different sections. Usually one of these consoles is down by the stage. And the reason why that is because one console, this console specifically, is designed to only mix what the artist hears in their ears or on the wedges on the stage or the floor speakers on the stage, right? So that one console happens here. This console here is focused on what the audience hears in the speakers up above, okay? And then there's another console upstairs that focuses on what you hear on your TV sets. So that's the difference between these 3 consoles. My job these days is different because we're both doing both jobs, because we can't be 6 feet from one another here. So as you can imagine now, one person is doing both jobs due to COVID. So what happens here is each fader or each output fader here is designed to go to each musician. So if you could see here, each fader represents a musician. So this is Amir, Questlove, this is Tariq, this is each person in the band. And what happens is the output of this fader, when I say output, I mean the signal, goes to a little in-ear monitor or a little wireless in-ear pack that they wear on their backs. And then it has an antenna, which you can see somewhere up here. Somewhere up here, there's an antenna. It's actually right here. You can see this antenna here. So the signal from my console goes out of my console into this antenna and then wirelessly to their belt packs. It's a little wireless belt pack that they wear on their hips. And that's how I could control what they're listening to. So to take it a little bit further, or to give you a little bit more detail here, you could see here, for those of you that know music and audio and sound, if you don't, it's okay. But each instrument here has its own fader. So this is the kick drum. I don't know if you could see that. Let's see here. Yeah, so this is the kick drum. This is the kick. These are each instrument. So the snare drum, the hi-hat, the tom, bass guitar. Every input into the console has its own control. So you can change here on this channel, you could change the EQ for each instrument. So as you can see here, you could change how the EQ sounds for each individual instrument. And then what you do with that is you send each of those instruments to each musician that wants it. So if you're a drummer, you would want to hear all your drum sets. So if I go to Questlove's mix here and I hit his button here, it turns green, right? And you can see the faders, and that's how loud he wants each instrument in his ear. If I go to the keyboard player, James Poisoner, you hit his button, he doesn't want any drums in his ears, but he wants to hear all of his keyboards. If I go to Tariq Black Dot, the vocalist, you would hear his mix changes. So as you can see, each person has a choice as to what they want to hear and how loud they want to hear it in respects to every other instrument. So every musician has his own choice.
That's awesome.
Right. So going back to what I said earlier, each musician, each guest, or each artist that comes on the show has his own specific set of levels and things that they want to hear. So it's my job when they come in that morning to translate what their requests are into their ears within that first hour and a half.
That's incredible. I mean, it sounds like it's very technical. Can you tell us, are there any natural talents that are needed to do this job, or is it mainly a job that could be learned through technical skills? What kind of path do you think students should take if they're interested in this type of career?
Well, it's a lot of it is learned. A lot of it's trial and error, and a lot of it is a long career of understanding the components of sound or understanding the components of an instrument, different levels and different technicalities regarding microphones and keyboards and so forth. So you do get a technical base, whether you study it in a school or you study it in books or you go work at a technical school, facility. Like locally, there's a lot of, well, I don't know how many there are these days, but there are technical audio companies that are in many of these different states, and you can learn a lot of this terminology and background there. I will say that everyone has their own set of talent and skills and genius to what they do. Me having gone to music school and studied music, I have a very good understanding as to what music should sound like, genre, as far as the genre is concerned, or as far as each instrument is concerned. You know, drums sound like drums, bass sounds like a bass guitar, piano sound like a piano. So you get to a point where everything is relative, right? I would say understanding your craft and understanding the technicalities behind what sonically gets something to sound good is important, but a lot of it's learned. A lot of it is what you've trial and error, what you've experienced in the past, and what information you've carried along with you throughout your career. Um, there, and the interesting part is that not everybody goes to school to do this. Some do, and some learn it by trial and error on the road or in a studio.
Yeah. So would you say being a musician would definitely help you learn to mix audio better?
Yeah, I would say most mix engineers and people in the music space or people in TV for that matter have had some interaction with music or film or being on TV. I mean, directors and TV directors probably have tried at some point writing or tried acting or tried some version of of what they do. And I think it's important to understand that I didn't start this by wanting to mix live TV, live sound, or mix for that matter. You know, I started off wanting to produce songs and write songs and produce records. And I think one thing to really explain is that when you start your career, and when I started my career, this was nothing as what I wanted to do at all. And what happened is doors opened. Doors opened because of passion, how much I loved being around it. That was the first part. And the second part was how much I enjoyed the people that I was around. And I guess another part is how much I enjoyed the conversations and the community that existed in in the area that I was focused on. It wasn't specific to mixing sound or working in TV. It was just a passion for being around this environment. And I was touring with a rap artist named Nas, and I didn't understand the music touring business, and I decided to teach. So I went into teaching a technical school, and then I felt like teaching wasn't for me. And it was there that I met somebody who got me into TV, and I started working on the Regis and Kelly show at the time, which is now Kelly and Ryan. And that's when I first got exposed to the world of TV, watching Gelman and Art Moore and the directors produce TV segments and watching how scripts got written and watching how it all came together. That was my first true exposure to TV. And that's where I learned about all these different jobs and how everything came together. And it was really, really, really interesting. I think the biggest takeaway from all this is, I think, passion for an environment and a culture. And then two, having patience and the right sense of personality to understand where you want to go and how you want to learn is really important.
Yeah. So you mentioned that doors open for you. You mentioned that there were other careers that maybe you discovered along the way. Could you tell us maybe a few careers that when you were in high school, you didn't even know existed? One of our biggest mission points through what we're doing is exposing students to opportunities that they've maybe never even thought about pursuing before. So could you give us a little bit of insight into those different careers that you see on a regular basis or that you've discovered over the years?
Oh, there's a million of them. let's say that there's a ton. Initially, when I started at school, I knew I wanted to work. Every career that I've learned about and got exposed to was via friendship or via some relationship that I threw myself into. It starts back in high school when I went to a new school. There was a kid at the that I got on my bus stop. He knew everybody. He looked cool. I found out he was a guitar player. Started hanging out with him. Found out his brother was a guitar player. From there, he joined a band. I went to hang out with the band that he joined. That band ended up recording a record. Didn't really go anywhere, and nobody really heard of them. However, it put me around recordings and studios. He then alerted me to Berklee College of Music. It is there that I pursued Berklee College of Music while also working in construction, building homes. And then I had some music ability, and I figured I'm going to chase this and I'm going to surround myself with the right environment to learn about more. And so to restate what you mentioned, which is what careers existed, it wasn't really until I chased my passion that put me into the environment that alerted me to careers that existed. So when I found out about Berklee College of Music, I found out about all the different programs and the different degree specializations that they had within the school. Then when I went to the school, you started to learn about all the different departments that the school had set up that were specific to the industry you were going into. So they had songwriting departments, they had film scoring departments, they had uh, engineering departments and business departments. So they had different curriculums that would essentially teach you the backbones of these different departments. And it was there that you learned about the different elements or the different divisions that made up of this music industry, if you will. Um, and it was there that I started to learn about the different careers. But the key component was the teachers and the other students. Um, so by being somewhat outgoing and somewhat social and somewhat curious, I built friendships within the school and within the community of the school that I was in, and I learned about their career path. So I studied, or I would become friends with the songwriters and find out what their path was, and friends with business majors and friends with musicians. And mind you, everybody's coming from different parts of the world, and everybody's vision for their career and their path and their life is much different than mine. And you start to essentially get exposed to what potential careers are out there. And it took me, a few years to really understand what path I wanted to go and what I wanted to study. Um, so I would say it had a lot to do with a lot of those friendships there, that I learned about all the different careers within the music space or within the space of making music and so forth and so on. They had TV for film, and it turns out I was great friends with the son of a composer who writes all the music for The Simpsons. So for there, I learned about his path, which was music for TV and film, because his dad wrote all the music for The Simpsons. It exposed me to, wow, that's interesting. Oh, that's what your dad does? What do you want to do? And then we became friends where we would do sound for Foley, which was sound design for music and film and TV, where we would go into studios and make all the sound effects that go into TV and music and film. And that was his path. So it was through the friendships, essentially through the friendships, through the relationships, and through the environment that really exposed me to a lot of what's out there.
Yeah, I think that's so important because so many times young people don't realize that you can begin building your network while you're still in high school. You don't have to wait until
If
after
not
you
sooner.
graduate.
Yeah.
Yeah, start building those friendships. You never know where those relationships and partnerships will take you in the future.
Well, I think it's really important. I think it's really important for students. And even now to this day, I'm 40 something years old and I still look at things this way. And I feel like you are who you surround yourself with. Um, your vision and your path is possible if you understand the path, but also understand everyone else is around you, and surround yourself with those people that may very well be smarter than you. I've often never feared being around someone smarter or more talented or more genius in their craft. I mean, don't get me wrong. I will say there are plenty of times, like when I was writing songs and trying to produce records, I was around musicians that could play 4, 5, 6 instruments better than Prince. And I like, and the best part about this is that, I could name them all now. One of them is the musical director for Lady Gaga. One of them is the music director for Ariana Grande. I've these guys that I've worked to school with, that I've worked with in my classes, that I've played with in my school. They are now responsible for the bands for Ariana Grande, Lady Gaga, Selena Gomez. I mean, the list goes on. And they are the musicians responsible for putting together and producing these major artist shows. So what you can see is that it's important to notice and surround yourself with people that you believe have something that maybe you don't have, but you connect with, you have great energy with, and that you could really learn from. Because ultimately, everybody's striving to get somewhere, and you never really know whose paths you're going to cross. And it's just really important to build yourself that network from early on till for the rest of your life. Because I'm out of Berkeley 21 years, and I still, to this day, somebody will come walking through this door that I went to school with from Berkeley, that I did this with and I made records with, and they are now the musician in charge for the performance, and you're hugging them, you haven't seen them in 10 years. So
Yeah.
it's very, 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 very important. The music space, the TV space is all about people. It's all about relationships, and it's all about understanding your surroundings. And it's really important to embrace that. The technical side, you have to do your job and you have to know it technically. But 50% of my job is my personality and my engagement with the people I work with.
I love so much that you said that. And I think that goes into almost any career that you pursue, is building those relationships can help you be successful no matter what job you have.
That's all it is. It's everybody helps. I mean, everyone, you really have to. It's a friend of mine told me this rule. There's the L. She calls it L. I think it's LKT. It's like when you first meet somebody, they have to like you. After they like you, they get to know you. And then after they get to know you, they begin to trust you. And it's until you complete that LKT rule in that circle is when you could really, truly have some sense of influence and engagement with those that you work with. And the other part is that it's okay to be around people, which took me a long time to learn. And for a long time, I feared people and stayed away from certain people that were better than me at certain things. And I won't say it became competitive, but you could almost become insecure over not being as good at something that somebody else is. And you see them becoming successful and growing and gaining, accolades and accomplishments because they're better in a certain area that you're not. But at times, everybody's, I guess, path, everybody reaches their end goal at different times. Some people get there faster and others take a lot longer. It doesn't mean you can't get there. One of my good music partners, he's a chef now, and everybody's path is different, but it doesn't mean that you don't go on that journey with that person.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you've already touched on it a little bit, but do you have actionable advice for students of what they could do right now while they're still in high school if they're interested in pursuing a career like yours?
Well, it's tough now because COVID. There's no live concerts. There's no events. I would say there's not a lot of hands-on training you're going to get now. But because the industries and a lot of these industries are pretty much crippled to some degree. However, what I would say is being 13 through 18 or whatever age bracket you guys are in, seeing where the future is. You have the advantage as far as understanding social platforms, understanding streaming platforms, understanding technology platforms, understanding where the world is going with regards to robotics and AI and everything else. You have the time now to study where the future is and where things are going, and being able to invest the time into what you see as the future, or what you think the future might be, is really important. I'm not saying my career is, there's always going to be live performances. There'll always be this career and this path. Unfortunately, I don't know that there's much experience you can gain right now in the current state that the world is in. You could work for local sound companies or local TV and film companies. I would say interning is probably the smartest thing you can do if you can get one now, or if you can go help out a friend and learn about things. It starts there. But nowadays everybody makes records on computers. Everybody is pretty self-contained at home. So, if you think you want to be in TV or film, or you want to build your own podcasts or build your own series and put it out on YouTube and understand those components, I think understanding where you want to be, find somebody that you look up to or their career that you look up to, and study their path and read a lot of books, blogs, listen to podcasts, anything you could do to study to see how they did it. Nowadays, everybody has a podcast explaining to you how they've done something. Everybody has a book or some kind of uh, like I said, it's podcasts where they're willing to explain to you how somebody else has done it. Guy Raz has a podcast called How I Built This by NPR, and he promotes stories about how companies were built. Study the companies, study someone in that path that has built something or working in a field that you look up to, and see how it is that they did it. For me in this career, I simply went to school to study it, but then after that, I went to work at a recording studio, and I simply worked for $5 an hour getting Jennifer Lopez her socks and coffee. And over time, I was allowed to be around the music creation process, and then from there, doors opened. But it's passion. You got to follow your passion. You got to follow what you believe in. You got to follow your talents, and you got to really, I guess the other part really is mentors. Um,
Mhm.
Having a mentor or having advisors, that have maybe 5 years experience, 10 years experience, 20 years experience, talking to them as much as possible and learning from them, because people people are willing to open doors for people and help people. So if you don't talk about where you want to go and what you want to do, and if you're not outward about it or explaining it to those around you, you're never going to be able to create opportunity for yourself.
Yeah.
So I think the key component is if you're interested in something, if you believe in something, if you love something, it starts with family. It starts with, then you go to relatives and friends and uncles and aunts, and your friend's mother could work in a career that's interesting. There's nothing wrong that when you're at your friend's house playing video games or whatever it is that you're doing, to ask them, how did you what do you like about your career, or who do and just talk about what you want, talk about where you want to go, um, and always remain somewhat focused and in the moment as much as you can. And then I think, in my opinion, what you put out will come back to you. So it's a matter of putting out the right energy for what your path and what your goals and what your passion is. And things happen. This job I got from a friend of mine. I was literally, we were performing with Brockhampton on the show, and it just fell into my lap. So, and I've wanted to work on this show for years. It just, the opportunity was never there, and I was always touring. And then other opportunities presented themselves for those individuals, and then this door opened. So,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's being open to any possibility that comes your way. And I love that you mentioned sometimes you have to be the person that gets the socks. You have to start at the bottom and be okay with that.
but
And
it even,
find
yeah,
those mentors. Mhm.
yeah, you have to be at the bottom because you learn something from it. Um, but I think it's important to understand where you, what sacrifices you're willing to make to then learn, because the key is you have to understand that maybe one, I don't know how many of you are two, how many, what size of this audience is right now, I'm not really sure, but maybe one of you can get lucky and by 19 have the successful career that you always dreamed of. Maybe it's quite possible none of you, but it doesn't mean it won't happen at 22 or 25 or 29 or 30. But what you have to be aware of is, as you go through your passionate steps, the stress of the world and the stress of the career and the goals and the passion that you have will essentially give you your character, give you your define your passion, and really enable you to focus on how you want to navigate through this career or whatever career you choose to get where you want to go. And you learn along the way of how to react. I mean, I trust me when I tell you, I've had some really rough times. I mean, I've had times where I was on tour with ASAP Rocky, a big rap artist, and I never was a stage manager, and the mixed careers were there, and I said, yeah, I'll stage manage. I never would want to stage manage a music tour because that wasn't what I wanted to do. It's a great career, but I just didn't want to do that. However, I wanted to go to Europe and I wanted to be with ASAP Rocky and I wanted to go to Europe for a month and I was just tired of being in America. So I said, sure. And after the first week, he told me I was ruining his show. And I said, okay. And I left. I was gone a week later. I was there for 2 weeks and I quit and left. And I went to go work with my other client, Tony Braxton. And I was usually mixing her and she wanted me to run a computer system. I was happy to run, but the demand of the career was more than I was ready for. I thought I was ready for it, but I wasn't. And because I was friends with her, I said, sure, I can do it. And I was able to do a good portion of it, but then it's kind of spiraled out of control. And I ultimately I was let go. And I worked with this artist for 10 years. And I found myself going, okay, I'm not touring. I just invested all this time with this artist. What's next? And then you got to find the next artist or the next client or the next opportunity. And a lot of that comes from your relationships. It's then you reach back out to all your friends and you go, what are you up to these days? Or what are you working on? And you start to think about all the relationships that you've had over your career and you begin to figure out where opportunities may come. And there was a period where I didn't have any work. This is a long time ago, right when Uber started. And I Uber drove for 2 months because it was a dark period. It was downtime. I had no clients. I went Uber drove. And in my Uber, I met people and had great conversations and took it in stride. And then, so I think doors will get slammed in your face constantly. And it's a matter of persevering, getting through them and finding new opportunities to keep your dream alive and keep your passion and your growth and your learning alive.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. You know, your life as an adult is going to look so different from year to year and decade to decade. And it's all about taking it in stride and being open to those opportunities. I love that you talked about your journey so much. I think that's great advice for students. And we're almost out of time, but we so much appreciate you being with us today. Is there any last words of wisdom that you would like to leave with students?
Yeah. Your vision and your dream and your goals are probably, you think they're too big, but the truth is they're probably not big enough. Dream as big as you could dream and then study how to get there. Study the execution and study the process because somebody else has done it. If you want to be on a rocket and go to Mars with Elon Musk, go to SpaceX and work. And you'll get there. Take the leap and jump in and sink or swim.
Yes, perfect advice. Dream big. I love that. Well, Jaime, we appreciate you being with us, all of our viewers, all of our students. I hope that you've been inspired today. We will have another guest on Thursday of this week, and we look forward to finishing out our virtual interview series every week. So check our website to find out more about our guest, and we look forward to seeing